Hi everyone, this is Christian Moralia, and this is the Transformative EdTech channel. And today we're taking a look at the big quandary of having so much technology and so little time. So during the pandemic, teachers have been inundated by all kinds of suggestions on technology. And recently I did a presentation with the California Teachers Association New Educators Conference in which we discussed technology and how to scale it down, how to decide what to use by focusing on some pretty basic concepts. So let's get rolling. So when I talked to the new teachers, the big question was, how do you decide which tech tool to use in your instruction? There's just a plethora of tech tools, and it can be really confusing, but you should really take a look at, before you use any tech tool, about what it's going to do, its efficacy in your instruction. So what do we look at? What exactly are those questions that you would be looking at? Now, we have to embrace technology because it is here. It's not going away. First of all, technology, it enhances learning. And for our students nowadays, it makes it accessible for 24/7. And that's what we need to have because our students are 24/7 students, especially if you're looking at the secondary. So when we take a look at technology, for example, if you use an LMS and my go-to is Canvas, you're providing that 24/7 access. And that's real important. And so that's definitely a consideration. If you're using data from assessments to guide instruction, and assessments, the term assessments doesn't mean tests. It does not mean tests. Assessments can come in many different ways, and gathering data isn't always about those numbers that are in test. And when we take a look at technology, you want to make sure it's interactive. The instructional delivery is interactive, students are engaged. Um, when you're looking at assessments, make sure that students have a choice in assessments because students can represent learnings in a myriad of ways. And you want to go to those applications that you've introduced, or maybe the students have introduced you to some applications. You also want to make sure you meet the students where they are at. And remember, they're using social media, they use video, they create podcasts, they create productions. I had students probably 5, 6 years back that were, or it was, I think maybe 3 years ago. I had a student that was a star on YouTube with her uh, makeup. So you want to meet students where they're at. So how do we know what tech tools work? How do we know what works and what doesn't? Because as I said, there's a lot of different things, and I know I've jumped into the pool many times where somebody says, hey, use this. And I embraced it, but I didn't take a look at those finer questions. So these are what I've come up with, these 3 questions to ask about tech integration. And just so you know, there's frameworks out there that can guide the selection of technology. There's a lot of books have been written about it, but for me, I just try to simplify the task. So I would go to Thomas Guskey for the first question. Thomas Guskey, the prolific academic author, and one of his big things is, does whatever you do increase student learning? That must be the goal. And then, having used tech for many years myself in the classroom, I always come up with, okay, is this the right application for the task? And most recently, we want to take a look at the SEL component. Can the tool that you're using create an environment where the SEL is integrated? And it's not just a one-shot deal and said, okay, I've done SEL, but is SEL, social emotional learning, part of your lesson? And how is that? So think about a tool that you might have used before. Does this tool actually increase student learning? Now, this is from a presentation, so you can see I'm using Pear Deck. And one of the things about Pear Deck is that I can see the responses. If I'm asking a question, I could see responses as I proceed through the lesson. And I could stop the lesson or stop for a particular student and ask them to go back to a particular prompt and then redirect them, which is real important. So I inspect what they've done, I've redirected, and they make the correction. So how do you know if it increases learning? As I said before, we want to take a look at any type of formative data you can get. So for example, during the class on Pear Deck, and there's not just Pear Deck, there's if you use Edge of Protocols, you're looking at slide decks. If you're using it Nearpod, teachers have access to what the students are doing. They could see in real time. And you could see if students are learning along the way. And if they're not, maybe it's time to reassess what you're doing and how you're doing it. Maybe what you're doing isn't working. And you can see that with student responses. We always talk about the blank look that happens in the classroom. And that's a way of gauging learning as well. If your students are checked out, then perhaps the tool you're using isn't going to work very well. So the second question I would ask about using technology, is it the right application for the task? In other words, what's going on with the actual task? You can use 2 to 3 different applications in a lesson. So for example, I'm using Pear Deck here. Okay, is it the right application for instructional delivery? Yes. If I want my students to watch a video, I could embed a video into Pear Deck. You could do the same thing with Nearpod, and there's other applications as well. You have to really take a look at what is your end result. Using the backwards design, what are you trying to accomplish? What do you want your students to accomplish? And then you should be taking a look at the application, because sometimes certain applications do not work for the particular task in which you're trying to accomplish. Now, the social emotional component, that's something that's really come to the forefront over the last couple of years, especially with pandemic instruction. And with social emotional learning, there's a lot of different parts to it. One, you want to make sure that students, they have emotional check-ins. You want to make sure that the lessons are engaging. You want to make sure that skills that can extend beyond the classroom, are they developing those skills with the tech tool? Does a tool provide feedback? This is, once again, I like Pear Deck, but with Google Slides, if you use the Edge of Protocols and some of the other ones where students can produce something and teachers can provide instant feedback, which is a great way of formative assessment, but students could see where they're at. Check-ins, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. Does a tool provide for emotional check-ins? Seeing where the students are at. I did that a lot over the last couple of years, and I really ended up bonding with my students. Personal learning goals. Can the students take a look at the tool they're using and say, okay, this is where I'm at, but this is where I want to be? Okay, so that social emotional component is really important. So here's some examples of some SEL student check-ins. And these are very important because, as I said, it builds a connection between teacher and student. So the two that I use, Pear Deck and Google Forms. And this is a standard Pear Deck slide. It's part of their SEL slides. And you can simply use this in the classroom when the students come in every day. And you could modify this too. I would usually modify the language, and you make it work the way you want it to work for your students. You know your students the best. But this is real important because I could get a sense where my students are at on any given day. And that helps me when I see that maybe they're not producing. They've put some information. I have a student teacher dashboard where I can reference, say, okay, maybe this student, I need to back off, maybe see what's going on with them. Real important part. And the cool thing about it is with Pear Deck, you've also got these the dashboard here that you can reference. Now with Google Slides, you are getting a spreadsheet. So as students are filling out a form, you can see what's going on. And as I said, this is extremely important in this day and age because we really want to get a sense of what's going on with our students as they come into our class, because there's so many things that are affecting them. So thank you for watching. And once again, we really want to focus on those 3 questions. Okay, does it achieve student learning? Is it the right tool for the application? And does it have a SEL component?